Trigger warning. This podcast may contain graphic descriptions of living with mental illness, situations of suicide, and sometimes of assault. Viewer discretion is advised. Welcome to another week of Shattered the Podcast. I'm Mark. Glad as always to be with you once again. We are chatting today about the fact that mental illness is not a solo sport. If you have a mental illness, you're never, ever, ever going to be able to conquer it on your own. Going to talk about that and a lot more today on STP.
Welcome to Shattered the Podcast,
sharing the lived experience of mental illness on
A father,
a mother.
a family.
Let's go.
Let's go.
Let's go.
Let's go.
like most kids that grew up in the last century, I was fairly independent. I was taught that being able to stand on your own 2 feet, making it by yourself was the ideal way to succeed in any situation. Now, I grew up in an extremely loving home, wonderful home. They valued respect, courtesy, and hard work. And I think that that was a brilliant way for me or any child to grow up, caring about those 3 things. Whenever I have a job or a task that I am expected to do, I want to do it as best I can for as long as I can and better than anybody else can. And that's simple things, packing away chairs after an assembly. I would be the first one there. I would try and pack the most chairs. It was never a competition. It was more about me just, I'm working hard. We've got a job to do. Let's get it done. How does that translate to mental illness? Well, I was working in a field with people with disabilities where we were all considered by people outside to be special. We were able to look after people with needs that other people wouldn't be able to deal with: physical health, hygiene, all sorts of different issues. And the people that I worked with were extraordinary. Now, it's no secret that I worked with a lot of people that could be very violent. And I worked with them for a long, long time. What I didn't realize is that the violent incidents that I was going through were damaging my mental health. I was still able to operate. I was still able to do the job, but at times I was doing it under capacity. I was doing the job poorly, and at times I was doing the job badly because I was just so burnt out through years of abuse and being able to just take it. On my very first day, there was a critical incident with a large client of mine. I've gone into the story in different podcasts, so I encourage you to look it up. He went for a member of public, a small child, a little girl, and he was going to smash her. And he was a big dude. And even though he was disabled, if he had got hold of her, he could have killed her quite easily. And I know that because I was young and fit and strong, and I had trouble holding him back. I had to literally dive in, pull him away, physically using my body to stop him being able to get at this little girl. Now, I got back to the unit. I was covered in blood, black eye, blood nose, hair disheveled, shirt ripped. The staff took me into the bathroom, wiped me down, and then said, okay, could you go see that client in bed 4? That was the way that we dealt with things. We didn't sit down at the end of the shift and say, oh, mate, you had this horrible incident today. We didn't acknowledge it at all. In the incident report, it said something like client had a tantrum in uh, the shopping center due to staff error. In brackets, it had staff was new and inexperienced. There was a lot that was unsaid in that, and that was not actually seen as a criticism of me. And I wasn't supposed to take it as a criticism. It was just, you have to write a report, you have to write something. I was new, I was inexperienced. Um, the fact that I'd basically been set up to fail by older staff who were lazy didn't factor into it. But the point I'm trying to make here is that at the end of that shift, I should have had a debrief. I should have sat down with somebody and talked through the incident. I didn't. And in fact, I made up jokes about that day. I used to tell that story in a way that would get laughs because that's the way I dealt with it. Hey, this horrible thing happened to me at work today. Hey, how about this? And then I had to do this, and then the cops did that. And now I look back on it and I look at that young man and I wish that I could take him aside and just say, all right, mate, what happened to you today was not normal. It's not something that you should expect in the workplace. Here's where the mistakes were made. And I did make a couple of mistakes, but there were mistakes on both sides. The workplace made a few massive errors in that situation. I should never have been put in that situation with that client until I'd gotten to know him. But of course, we know that didn't happen. Now, the other way that I didn't deal with things is that when everybody stopped to have a coffee break, I generally didn't stop because I didn't drink coffee. And I wasn't there to socialize and I wasn't there to spend time with the other staff. I was there to care for people and go home. So I never sat around drinking those cups of coffee. All the times at the end of a shift when somebody would say, "Oh, we're all going down to the pub." Well, I don't drink. I don't really like pubs. I like pub food, but I don't like hanging out at a pub just having a drink. That doesn't make sense to me. It's something. It's like, why don't we go have a picnic in a cactus farm, like something ludicrous. That's what it feels like to me when or felt like when people said, "Oh, we're just going down the pub. We're going to toss down a few after work." Well, I didn't think about the fact that they weren't just tossing down a few, they were de-stressing. They were decompressing from the day. They were letting out their angst. Oh, this client, I can't believe what he does this. I was known for the fact that whenever I worked, the place was very, very calm. In fact, I had a parent show up during the morning time one day and he kept apologizing to me that he was in the way. And no, everything's fine. Everything's fine. And because I treated the house like it was the client's house, it wasn't my house. So I was respectful. I was quiet. I was gentle in the way that I did things. He came to me afterwards and said, "Mate, I don't know how you got today done." He said, "You made it look effortless." And he said you could barely tell that anything was happening, but every kid was outside the door ready to go at the exact time they needed to be. He said, "I've never seen the house like this. It's always a bomb site in the mornings." And I didn't know what to say because that's the way I always assumed that things were supposed to be. I had tremendous self discipline when it came to dealing with incidents, in that I didn't get caught up in emotion. I didn't get caught up in the excitement of a situation. The point in case that I use is I was walking up a narrow staircase and For some reason, I don't know what, I just felt I got to step to the side. Now, it was a really skinny staircase. It wasn't a big wide one. It was a little tiny skinny staircase. And I kind of stood to the side, and I'm really glad I did because a microwave came flying by my head. Oh, it's on this side. Came flying by my head. A client upstairs who was having a tantrum and had grabbed the first thing that he could throw, and in this case, it was a microwave. Now, I wondered now how people would react to that, and I asked people in sessions, how would you feel if this happened to you? What would you do? And people are like, "Oh, I'd freak out. I'd run away. I'd scream. I'd do anything." Besides that, well, my first reaction was to check and make sure that I was safe, make sure that I was not hurt. Clearly, that was not the case. Forget about the microwave. We'll deal with that later. My job was to get upstairs as quickly as I could and to make sure that everybody was safe. And that's what I did. I raced upstairs, looked around, assessed the situation, figure out what's going on, try and figure out if there's a problem with the client. I was detached, I was clinical. I wasn't dealing with the fact that I'd had a near death incident on the way to work in my workplace. A few months ago, I was driving along in the rain and a truck just come bawling past me. And I was in the right hand lane and he was on the left hand side. Anyway, it was dropping back and it looked like he was really slowing down. So I accelerated. I was going to pass him. Now I'm right beside the truck. Now, this guy, for whatever reason, didn't check his mirror and he came across. And I'm here. He's coming right across. I'm about to go under his back wheels. And quite literally, I thought I was. I thought, this is it. I'm about to die. I slammed on the brakes. I turned to the side. A guy that was following me said it was one of the best pieces of driving he'd ever seen. For me, it was just in a panic, just trying to do anything to not end up dead. Got out of the car. I was freaking out. My heart rate was pacing, was racing. I was nervous. I was just stuttering. I was having trouble holding things. It was a near death experience. The guy that I said, he pulled up after me and went, "Man, we need to get that guy's number plate because he should be charged for that. Do you have a camera?" I said, "No, I don't." He goes, "Oh, mate, wish you had have. Would have been this guy was so dangerous." You know, the cars behind me who weren't even involved were excited about it, were their adrenaline was racing. In my job, a microwave flies past my head. I can't allow that adrenaline to drive my actions. I need to hold my rage, my fear, my excitement, and I need to go upstairs, make sure everybody is safe, make sure everything is calm. This is the way that I'm talking. Okay, mate, you're upset. What do we need to do? I thought that that was how I had to be all the time. If you listen to Marriage with Mental Illness, Marriage and Mental Illness that I do with my wife, Mary, we tell the story about how before I was actually hurt and came to get a diagnosis of PTSD, I was showing mental illness symptoms. About every 3 months, Mary said that it's like clockwork. I would just become either extremely depressed, massively depressed, or I would have an outburst of anger. Never against anybody else, always directed against myself. Neither of us saw that as being anything but a glitch. You know, all the rest of the time I was good. I was fine. I was great. I was always the life of the party. A friend of mine said to me once, he said a comment which still rings true to this day. He said, "You never met a person you didn't like." And then on the outside, absolutely, yes. On the inside, it's a different story. I learned in that workplace to control how I react to things, and I thought I was controlling my mind. This is where I need to make the point that you cannot do mental illness by yourself. It is a team sport. There's no individual achievement here. It's not a solo marathon that you can run by yourself. It's just not. If you try and do it by yourself, you will fail. Mental illness is not a state of mind, it's an injury, it's an illness, it's a disability, it's a physical manifestation in your body. Something in the wiring, in the chemicals in your brain have changed. I've been reading this story about this guy that was a Navy SEAL, and they made a movie out of the situation, Lone Survivor. He and four dudes went in to fight the Taliban, got their butts kicked. It was bad. He barely got out alive. When he tells the story, for the most part, it's about how he is a Navy SEAL. He's tough. He self-reliant, physically in the best of his abilities, the best of the best of the best. But he talks about one of his mates being trapped a couple of meters away from him. This is a guy that he would die for and had been in situations where he'd been, if a bullet had been 1 inch to the left or right, he would have died for his mate. In this case, the guy was dying. He was shot, he was bleeding, and he was weeping for Marcus Luttrell to come and get him. And Marcus has this line in the book where he says, I don't know why, but I can never stop hearing that cry for help. He said, at times it will be in the daytime. I'll be awake and I'll be lucid and I'll hear that scream. He said, I don't know what's happened, but I'll never, ever be able to not have that scream in my head. Something in his mind was changed by the trauma of that incident. He went back to being a Navy SEAL after that. He's written books. He's a communicator. He's a speaker. He's a heroic man. But something changed in him. Now, his whole book is about him and his four mates that went on this patrol. But the thing that keeps coming back is that once he lost those mates, he couldn't do things by himself. He couldn't just exist the way that he did before. Hold your feelings in. You can cry, but only if somebody dies or your arm gets ripped off in a tractor accident. Now he's like, I needed help. And that is why mental illness is a team sport. Because unless you get a team around you, you will not make it. Uh, there's so many sports analogies. No sports that I really like, but there's always a team of people around waiting to help. I guess Formula One is the best way to go. You're in your Formula One car driving around. You have to navigate it yourself. You have to have life skills to be able to race the car in the first place. But if you don't have a pit team, if you don't have coaches, managers in your earpieces discussing strategy, talking about the needs of the vehicle, figuring out how much distance you could make. Do you need new tires? A Formula One driver is only as good as his team. And that's the same as a person with a mental illness. You are only as good as the team around you. What does a team look like? Well, hopefully, it's the people close to you, it's the people that you love, the people that you live with, the ones that know you better than you know yourself. Hopefully, it's them. What do you do if you don't have that kind of loving, supporting group? Go to a doctor. Well, even if you've got a supporting group, you're still going to have to go to a doctor. Let's just not pretend. It's like if you had a broken leg. You're not just going to go, you know what? If I keep it still, it'll get better. It won't. It may heal, but it won't heal right. It's the same with mental illness. You may get over the worst of it, but you will never get to a point where you're able to move forward because you'll still be hampered by the injury. Go to a doctor. If the first doctor you see isn't kind, empathetic, and caring, find another doctor. Call up a medical center and say, do you have somebody that specializes in working with people that may have mental health issues? They all will. Every clinic has that one doctor that is really, really good at identifying, helping, supporting people with mental illness. Reach out to a support service. If you're in crisis, call Lifeline, call Helpline, call any line, clothesline, call somebody. It's important that you just reach out, that you speak to people. Now, the GP is going to be the manager of your team. They're going to be the one who you're going to rely on the most, but they are going to make referrals for you. They're going to say, okay, I am not a specialist in the brain, which is all a psychiatrist is. It's not a witch doctor. Thank you, Alan, for mentioning that in your story. I loved it. They're not a witch doctor. They're not going to do oogie boogie. They're just a doctor who specializes in matters of the brain. A psychologist works under the direction of a psychiatrist to develop plans, to develop medication strategies for you to start to navigate your mental illness. Because, first off, you've got to learn the language of mental illness. You've got to learn to talk about the things that are going on inside of you, because at first you don't know. Just going up to somebody and saying, I'm really, really, really sad, well, that doesn't explain it. But hey, I feel like I'm at the bottom of a dark pit and I'm choking and I feel claustrophobic. It's okay. We got a lot that we can unpack there. Mental illness comes in a multitude of ways, in an infinite amount of ways. For me, the first signs were burnout, depression, and anger. I just always got over it. Couple of days, couple of hours, couple of days. I'd get to a point where it just wasn't affecting me anymore. I didn't do anything special. I just would wait it out. If at that time I had have acknowledged that something was wrong, and I did go and see a doctor at the time, and he gave me some pills, and I was on them for a week or two, and I felt great. Thought everything was fine. But when he asked questions, does this happen often? I was like, no, no. Is it debilitating? Can you still go to work? Oh, yeah, of course I can. Why wouldn't I be able to go to work? Just a bit sad. I can pretend I'm not sad for a day at work because I'm a professional. Without a team, you will not make it. Now, if you're a person that is alive, chances are that you know somebody, you are aware of somebody in your sphere of influence that is or has or might be struggling with mental health issues. You are part of that team, whether or not you want to be. Now, friends, family cannot fix friends and family. You will not be able to be the knight on a white horse that comes in and says the right thing at the right time and saves the day. What you will be is the farmer. fertilizing seed, watering the seeds, hoping that all the seeds that you cast out, something might grab. What do I mean by that in a practical sense? I mean that by love and support. Just by, mate, I know you're doing it tough. But I'm so proud of you for keep going. The right word at the right time has never been able to fix me. But man, it's made the difference in some battles. Sometimes when you're really struggling, somebody comes out of nowhere and just says, "Hey, you said this thing the other day, and it really meant a lot to me. I'm really glad that you said that. Thank you so much." For some people, it's just as simple as saying they look good. Some, it's as simple as saying, "I am glad that you're here." Somebody that's struggling, that's gone to a family event or something like that, and you take them aside and just say, "Man, I'm so glad that you're here. It wouldn't be the same without you." That's your job, just to love and support and be part of the team. Let's hammer the F1 motorsports analogy a little bit more. When the pit crew jumps out around the car and everybody's got a job, everybody's got an individual thing that they need to do. Somebody's got to put fuel in the car, I guess. Somebody's got to put fluid in the car. Got to change the tires. Got to pump up the tires. Got to pump down the tires. There's even a dude that wipes the windshield. Which is the most important person on that team? Is it the fuel guy? Is it the tire guy? Or is it the windshield guy? Because maybe the guy cleaning the windshield cleans off that bug that distracts the driver long enough that he can't overtake the next opponent. It might seem mundane, it might seem unimportant, but it's as important as any other job on that team because it's a part of the whole. So you, just by being part of that team, by just wiping down that windshield, you are no more or less important than anybody else. And in fact, the moment might come where that tiny little thing that you do could be the thing that saves somebody's life. Could be the the thing that makes the absolute crucial difference at that moment of desperation. That kind word, that loving gesture, that gift that you gave somebody, that cup of coffee that you brought them, that you're in a shop and you see something and you go, "Oh, such and such would love that," and you've got the money, just get it for him. Just give it to him for no reason. Just, "Mate, I was thinking about you." The thought that somebody was thinking about me almost drives me to tears because I'm so grateful that somebody is aware that I exist. And for somebody to come up with something that is really meaningful, something that I said or did or something touched them in a way, it's a gift when it's described to me because I don't believe that I can possibly have that kind of impact on anyone. I truly believe that. That's why when people give me a compliment, I'm always ready to cut it down. "Hey, mate, you were really good on the podcast the other day." It's like, "Yeah, I doubt you even listened. But I've got a good voice. So, mate, when you were playing with your kids and I just loved how they were laughing and it made me smile because you were smiling with your kids." Man, that is a massive admission. That's something I didn't quite realize about myself. somebody asked me a couple of weeks ago why I talk about this stuff. And at times, it's more for me than it is for you. I hear myself say things and I put things into words, and I just go, wow, I've been thinking about that and I hadn't actually thought about that. The idea that I could be on somebody's mind for no other reason than they're just thinking, yeah, that guy's a good dude. The idea that that happens staggers me. And already in my mind, I'm like, yeah, nah, people don't do that for you, Mark. They're kind to you when they see you, but they wouldn't go out of their way. You might think that your job, working, living with a person with mental illness, is so inconsequential that it's wiping the windshield of a Formula One car. But that small gesture could have a massive impact. The best tires in the world, all of the petrol in the world, are useless to a Formula One car if you can't see out the front of the car. That's the way it is with your person with a mental illness. It might seem like they don't want you there. It might seem like they're angry at you. But inside, they are desperately lonely. They want the carrots to hang on to. They want things that they can be proud of, be pleased with, to be important to somebody. And if you never tell them, they can live with that emptiness and that loneliness in ways that you can't even imagine. Mental illness is not a solo sport. It's a team sport. And you're on that team, whether you're the sufferer or somebody that knows somebody that's suffering. What's your role on that team? Do you have a role? Can you have a role? You absolutely can, because kindness costs nothing. Kindness will not empty your bank account. It will not take time away from your life. Kindness is the easiest gift, the best gift that you have to give. And even if you're sufferer, even if the person that's got the mentals, that's close to you, seems like they're indifferent to you, seems like they don't care, they don't want to care, they do. They desperately need that team around them. I'm going to leave it there. Have a great week, everybody. I look forward to speaking to you this week. We're going to chat to Mary with her marriage with mental illness, marriage and mental illness. We're going to talk about family and mental illness. What do you do if your family seems indifferent, doesn't seem to care? That's what we're going to hit on next time. Like, subscribe, share, help us out, support us financially if you like to. You can do that by checking out the link below. Have a great day. I'll speak to you next week. Bye-bye. Thank you for listening to Shattered the podcast. I'd like to thank our producer, Meredith Brosnan, our executive producer, Torian Lau, and the band Adelaide for allowing us to use their song as our theme. Go to shatteredthepodcast.com for more information.